Hello everyone, Oli here, and welcome to a review of Marco Polo, the fourth story of the first season of classic Doctor Who, starring William Hartnell as the first Doctor. It's 7 parts long and is written by John Lucarotti, and this is the first pure historical episode of Doctor Who. This review is going to be rather different, as there are no physical copy of this story, as Marco Polo is one of the 26 missing Doctor Who stories. Yeah, this is when the BBC junked videotapes of video programs they recorded. It was stopped in 1978, and this mainly affected the first and second Doctors. You've had some cases where some missing episodes were found, the latest being in 2013 when Enemy of the World and most of the Web of Fear were found in my home country of Nigeria. No episodes of Marco Polo exist, but telesnaps do exist of all episodes except for episode 4. But there are no 8mm recordings or censor clips from the story that survive. But the audio of this story does exist, and the audio for every missing episode exists. You can still watch Marco Polo even though it doesn't visually exist. There's a company called Loose Cannon. They've made reconstructions of all the missing episodes by using the telesnaps from the missing stories and photographs and production photos from the other stories. But I don't use Loose Cannon, even though it's quite popular, but I don't really use it. I use Huricons on YouTube. But if you want to watch Loose Cannon, you can find them on Dailymotion as well. But also on the Edge of Destruction DVD, there's a 30-minute reconstruction of Marco Polo, but that's something I don't really recommend because it's only 30 minutes and there's a lot of stuff that is cut out. So the plot of Marco Polo is as follows. Arriving in Central Asia in 1289, the Doctor and his companions join the caravan of the famous Phoenician explorer Marco Polo as he makes his way through the snowy heights of the Pamir Plateau, across the treacherous Gobi Desert and through the heart of Imperial Cathay. Yeah, and on their way they encounter some threats, including the main villain Tegana. I understand this is an episode everyone wants to see return to the BBC archives, and it's the first missing episodes, and nothing except for photos and the audio exists. But to be honest, this story wasn't really for me. I mean, 7 parts, it was too much for me. I mean, the plot dragged and it was very slow. And there was one point I was actually getting bored, to be honest. I understand that it was not meant to be watched all at once, but I didn't even watch Marco Polo all at once when I was watching it. But if it was on a weekly basis, I would have actually got on board and probably wouldn't have tuned in for the next episode. Along with the long plot, I thought Marco Polo, the character, wasn't written very well at all, but I think the actor, his name was... let's check here. Mark Eden, I think he did his best as Marco Polo. Yeah, he did some good parts as well, but I just think the character of Marco Polo wasn't written very well. He spent most of the story being cautious of the Doctor and the Doctor, Ian, Susan, and Barbara, even though the threat was pretty much in front of him, and that was quite annoying, to be honest. And the threat being Tegana, and I think that should have been resolved earlier into the story as opposed to the last few moments of episode 7 and when they got into that sword fight and Marco Polo won. And the dialogue I actually thought was quite excessive, and it was just oh, just stop talking, let something happen already. Except for the cliffhangers. I think that's where most of the action of that story comes from, especially I think it was the cliffhanger where Susan, the Doctor, and that girl, Pink Cho, were in the Cave of 500 Eyes, and then Susan claimed that she saw the statue move. Speaking of which, I loved Susan and Pink Cho's friendship, but towards the climax of the story, I think they were obsessed with saying goodbye to each other. That was a bit odd. I mean, whenever my friends, I don't obsess and say goodbye to them. Not all the time, but I just thought it was a bit dragged out and it was a bit weird, to be honest. But the negatives aside, there were some really good things about this story. I mean, the existing pictures showed the wonderful set design, and I really enjoyed it. And it was very good to look at. I remember in the movie The Invention of Space and Time, we actually saw the set, and it was beautiful. And I remember reading somewhere that Mark Gatiss, I think he was the one who organized the invention Space and Time. He was this close in saying, you know what, forget it, let's film Marco Polo. He actually did say that, but thank God that didn't happen, for obvious reasons. But to be honest, I think the BBC spent a lot of time making the episode look good instead of actually well, not just the BBC, well, the set, well, the producer, I think Verity Lambert, I think she spent a lot of I can't speak for some reason. I think she spent a lot of time trying to make the episode look good visually, but in terms of the story itself, not so much. Well, the main cast were great as well, even though despite what they were given. And there was a part, I think early into the story, where Susan was talking to Barbara about home, and I found that absolutely lovely. The supporting cast were great as well, and of all the supporting cast, Tigana actually stood out for me, even though he was a very ish villain, but he was actually quite good. And I think, what's his name again? The actor's name? Darren Nesbitt. Yeah, he did a good job despite what he was given. But I liked the narration of the story. I thought that was actually quite clever. And with Marco Polo narrating the whole journey, I think that was actually quite clever. I mean, if this story actually gets found, and if the story actually gets found, and we see like the narration of how Marco Polo is talking about how they travel to this place to the other, that actually sounds quite good. It was actually a good concept, and I like that. I think this is one of the only times where Doctor Who, or Classic Who in general, had an in-story narration, not just in the beginning. I think when you get some New Who stories as well that actually have, but I think the name of the Doctor actually had narration in it from Clara, not just in the beginning of the episode. I think in most middle of the story as well, when she was explaining how she was born to save the Doctor or something like that. Yeah, it was quite smart. So there were some good ideas for this story. I can tell John Le Carrotti actually tried. He actually did some research about it. Well, every historical story has to have at least some form of research. But it was poorly executed in my opinion. And to be honest, I'd have to give Marco Polo a 5 out of 10. If it does return to the archives, my opinion could change. But I can see Marco Polo coming back in the next few years maybe, but not so soon. But if it does get found, or at least a clip actually gets found or something, maybe my opinion would change on Marco Polo. I actually really wanted to like the story, but I couldn't because it was too long, it was too boring, it was a bit dull. Yeah. So my next review is The Keys of Marinus. Well, thankfully all episodes of that story exist. And this is the first of many Doctor Who six-parters. One of the most divisive concept of Doctor Who. In my opinion, six-parters, if it's written well, then there's actually, but I'll get to that when I get to The Keys of Marinus. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, drop a like, give me feedback what you thought of Marco Polo. Thank you for watching again. See you around.